That's very good. Thank you, Arun Ramanathan. Did I do it? Yeah. And thanks to the Ed Trust, Wes, for your excellent research and your work on education reform and initiatives that I think are moving California in the right direction. I like that you said I was an advocate. I am not an expert. I am not a teacher. Since you all mentioned that you're happily married, I am not married any longer. But I was married to a teacher, and actually we agreed on virtually everything I'm talking about today. So I do want to say that although I'm not an expert, part of why I'm an advocate is because, as I've said many times, it was a public school that gave me a second chance, and a public school teacher that helped to turn my life around. And I did work for the Teachers Union for 8 years prior to getting elected to the State Assembly. And those of you, and there are a couple who were there in the Assembly when I was, know that I was, without question, an advocate for public education funding. I remember those rallies. I was speaker at the time. They weren't rallying against me because they knew that I was absolutely focused on funding our schools. But I am here to have a conversation, and it's a conversation not just on the state of our schools, but on what every one of us can do, what we all have to do to fix them. I've long believed that schools are anchors for our neighborhoods. They're the places we build strong communities around. Schools aren't just where you go to learn, they're where you go to build a future. Well, at least they used to be. When my generation went to school in the 1950s and 60s, that's when I was actually in our public schools, they were synonymous with excellence. The Golden State, as someone said, was the gold standard. But somewhere along the way, the schools in which we invested so much time, thought, and capital, we were also in the top 5 in per pupil spending, slowly began to crumble figuratively and literally, and we were left with what we have today. 47% of California's 13-year-olds are struggling to read at grade level, and over half do not meet our standards in math. Our schools are currently ranked 47th in the nation in per pupil spending and are sure to drop to dead last if we don't pass a tax extension. Our public education system is so egregiously failing kids of color that 98 out of 100 black male students in Los Angeles Unified School District are ineligible for the UC system that I went to as a young boy or young man. Now, this is our status quo, and I don't think a single one of us in this room believes that that status quo should be acceptable. And why I've become such a passionate advocate about this issue is because I hear too many excuses about it. All I hear is, well, Mr. Villaraigosa, you just don't understand. You don't understand that so many of these kids that you're describing here that reflect the statistics I just shared with you, they're poor kids. They're on the school lunch program. They come from foster homes. They're English language learners. Their parents didn't go to college. Well, you know, how many of us fell in one of those categories? I fell in multiple categories, and I can read and write. I went to college. I went to law school. Those are excuses, and we've got to face up to that. We've got to acknowledge the fact that kids can learn. All kids can learn, and that what we suffer from in many ways is the soft bigotry, as a president who I don't need to refer to and didn't vote for and didn't support, but I have quoted from time to time, the soft bigotry of low expectations. This idea that, these kids can't learn because they come from the wrong zip code, their parents are in the wrong tax bracket, or their color of the skin might be a little darker than yours or mine. Maybe not mine, but. Now, our schools should be the true embodiment. In fact, they, some ways, historically certainly have been the true embodiment of the American dream, a place where people are judged on achievement and rewarded on merit. And I believe that begins with a great teacher in every classroom. I don't think most people would disagree with that. And of course, it's not just about teachers. I don't want to contribute to the growing chorus that paints teachers as the exclusive problem or the solution. Our reform efforts will fail if they fixate on any single issue. Teachers, without question, are absolutely critical, but so are principals, and so are parents. In fact, parents have the key to that first door to opportunity. So is a well-rounded curriculum that includes the arts. So is per-pupil funding, and particularly funding that follows the student. Transparency in how we fund these schools. But nothing can eclipse the importance of teachers. No one disputes the fact that our system is not recruiting, supporting, evaluating, or retaining teachers in the way that it should. Now, a few months ago, I had an opportunity to talk to a group of teachers at a Teach Plus town hall. It's one of these, oh, it's with you, what am I saying? There you are. It's this electronic thingamajig where you ask a question, they immediately answer it in real time, and you see it on one of these. And this organization is doing some fantastic, innovative, and progressive work in support of teachers. And the event was a real learning experience for me, and not just because I was surrounded by dedicated, devoted, and committed teachers, but nearly everyone present agreed that in-class evaluation is a critical component to measuring teacher effectiveness. Now, after learning that many principals never even set foot in the classroom, I asked teachers to raise their hands if they had ever been evaluated without any observation. I think most of you know the answer. I worked for UTLA. I represented many of those teachers. And sure enough, nearly 2/3 of the hands in the rooms went up. I was shocked, not by the fact that many of them, but by the amount of them that said they didn't come into their classroom once. Now, when you consider that at LA Unified, 99% of teachers, and I think it's 99.3% of teachers in LA Unified, receive a satisfactory evaluation, you realize that the current system isn't functioning the way it should, or functioning at all. Think about it this way. Those of you who are teachers, or were teachers, principals, educators. If over 99% of students received an A grade would lose its meaning. It wouldn't have much significance. The question we really should be asking is how can we expect teachers to excel in the classroom with minimal feedback and support? In my schools, partnership schools, 21 schools, 21,000 kids, I did not get cherry pick. I didn't get all of the kids who were in the best schools in LA. I didn't get to say I just get the excelling kids. I don't get the English language learners. I got the same kids. I took on the lowest performing schools. Our principals are in classrooms 3 hours a day. That's the goal, 3 hours a day. You're the instructional leader. That's your responsibility, to be in a classroom. Now, we know that principals have a big job and oftentimes have a lot of pressure on them. But many of them have forgotten that the most important job is to be in a classroom. They're the instructional leader. Most important job is to be supporting, nurturing, developing, weeding out the best and the brightest and the ones who just aren't making it. And most importantly, how can we expect students to achieve at the highest levels if we have no accurate measure of teacher effectiveness? Now, our schools will never truly serve all students and all teachers until we have a robust and relevant teacher evaluation system, a system that provides accurate information for students and parents, a system that provides accountability to principals and school leaders, and a system that's useful to teachers by providing meaningful feedback and support. So let's start by evaluating teachers on multiple measures. Let's be sure they're observed in the classroom, provided with feedback from peers, and that student growth over time is part of the equation. Let's use this system to reward the best, most effective teachers with accelerated career tracks and leadership roles. Let's use it to reach the teachers who are well-liked and motivated, but need a little extra support to truly excel in the classroom. Let's use the system to ensure that teachers who are consistently ineffective year after year have some accountability that is associated with that. You nurture them, you work with them, you support them, but when they're not working and they're not effective, then you have to address that. That is not an anti-union proposition. It's just not. It makes common sense. We're going to have to ask the question, why is it that in the one profession that is the most responsible, if you will, for educating the future of the state and the nation, why there is there no ability to have other factors drive how we evaluate, how we assign, how we transfer, how we lay off, what we do to dismiss folks that just aren't working. With real evaluations in place, we wouldn't have to rely on something as arbitrary as seniority to make important decisions for us. We could use this information to hire and assign based on mutual consent, matching teachers to the jobs they want in the classrooms where they can have the greatest impact. This system wouldn't just help us evaluate teachers, it would help us measure achievement throughout our schools and our districts. I love that you got here at the end, but that's okay. He used to work for me, but with real data rooted in student achievement and stakeholder feedback, we can build upon the school report card. Make sure he gets a copy of it so he can see. With real data rooted in student achievement and stakeholder feedback, we could build upon the school report card that piloted in my partnership schools, now been taken district-wide, and ensure that every parent has access to a transparent school report card with a letter grade, just like student report cards. But before I continue outlining these reforms, I want to be absolutely clear on something. I believe in teachers. All across our state, each and every day, teachers are performing minor miracles and reaching countless students. I know because I was one of them. Dropping out of high school, I went back, earned my degree, went on to college and law school after that, in large part, first and foremost because of my mother, but also because of an inspiring and dedicated teacher who I still talk to all the time, Herman Katz. I began my career as an organizer, as I said, and a legislative advocate for the Teachers Union. I think most of them would say I was their chief steward in the 6 years that I was here. And over the past 3 years, I've had the honor and privilege of working with dedicated teachers and school leaders to turn around our lowest performing schools. Every teacher enters and this is every teacher, effective or not, I believe enters the profession to make a difference in the lives of students, and the vast majority of teachers are doing just that. They're the teachers I meet when I visit schools throughout Los Angeles every week. They love to teach, and it shows. They come prepared. They understand their students' needs and abilities. They set high expectations and demand the very best from their students. These are the teachers we need to hang on to. But all too often, These are the teachers we're losing to charter schools or laid off when budgets are cut. Just imagine how demoralizing it is for an enthusiastic, excellent young teacher to get pink-slipped not once, but 3 years in a row. Most professionals would not stand for that kind of job insecurity, but our teachers do it because they believe in our students. And just like Mr. Katz refused to give up on me, our teachers refuse to give up on them. But sadly, it's students who bear the brunt of a revolving door of teachers when budget cuts force layoffs. Just ask the students at Hamilton High. Over the past 2 months, they've staged sit-ins and walkouts demanding that their teachers keep their jobs despite the massive projected layoffs at LA Unified. Now, this much is clear. The current system, teachers assigned, transferred, and laid off solely based on seniority, isn't serving those teachers, and it isn't serving students. Now, we all know this has to change, but every honest effort to accomplish that seems to be dead on arrival here in Sacramento. We saw this last week when Senator Huff had a bill on teacher evaluations, while at the same time there were thousands fighting for a tax extension. And what I've said is, we need a tax extension, everybody. We're 47th in per pupil spending. We can't lose another 20,000 teachers in this state. It's absolutely unacceptable. But we also need a reliable teacher evaluation system. The problem in Sacramento is that everyone's stuck to the notion that a single problem is to blame for our failing schools. Now, depending where you stand, it's either chronic underfunding or bad teachers. It's either, but the fact is, reforming our schools is not a zero-sum game. The truth is, we can no longer afford to cling to knee-jerk, anti-tax, or blindly pro-union allegiances. I am unabashedly a progressive. You look across the spectrum of issues that I've gotten behind over the 15 years I've been in public life. I do not back away from being someone who wants to change the world and not afraid to take on those issues. And that's why I'm not afraid to take this issue on. The fact is, this system is broken. The bureaucracy defends a broken system that's not working for too many of our kids. And the most powerful defenders of that broken system tend to portray every effort to fix the broken system as somehow anti-union. And it's not. What it's saying is, hey, let's work together. Let's get teachers in front of the reform effort. Let's get our unions collaborating with our parents to get in front of all of this, to really challenge ourselves, every one of us, and fix what's broken. So my message today is this. It's not enough to just talk about getting rid of bad teachers or fully funding our schools. Let's agree that we need to focus dollars in the classroom, but that we also need a system in place to hold everyone in that classroom accountable for that investment. I've been fighting for more than 20 years now for more funding for our schools. And everywhere I go, and you see it in the polling, people are willing to put the tax cut extension on the ballot, but they're barely willing to support it. And let's be honest, the only way you're going to get people to want to invest more in our schools is for them to see that we're doing more with the money that we got, that we're innovating, that we're asking the tough questions, that we're breaking down the silos, that we're challenging ourselves to do better, that we're setting the highest goals for our kids in the toughest schools and all across the board. Now, if this sounds like La La Land, you know, in states across this country, they're starting to tackle these problems. Just look at Maryland, Colorado, and Illinois. All three state legislators are working on some of the most progressive education reforms in the country. They're agreeing to extend the time it takes to earn tenure from 2 to 3 years. They're agreeing to make student growth a key factor in teacher, and principal evaluations. They're anchoring their reform efforts in meaningful evaluation systems. And by the way, the unions are part of the discussion. They're participating in this effort. And I think we need to take it a step further. I'd like to see tenure earned over a period of 4 years. I'd like to see it re-earned in subsequent years. I mean, the fact is, that, again, there aren't a whole lot of professions where you get a job for life. You know, you work for it, you earn it, and then you got to earn it again. That's not a radical proposition, everybody. It makes sense to most people. And it ought to make sense in this state. Because those things, without question, have a tremendous impact on kids, on their sense. Oh, I'm sorry. Now, I'd like to see teachers not just observed in class, but evaluated by their peers and, where appropriate, by their students as well. I'd like to see teachers' contributions to the school community factor in, also whether they show up early or give extra homework or coach a sports team or chaperone a club, because these things have a tremendous effect on kids. So we're not just talking about student growth over time. That should be a factor, but so should other things. There's a way to put an evaluation system that accurately and effectively evaluates effective teachers that does it with multiple measures, not just one thing, and that does it in a way that people feel good about. And it was mentioned here that I know that in LA Unified, they've at least come to a general agreement about it. We've not come to, you know, not implemented it yet. We still got to do that, but it's, you know, it's a step in the right direction. And I too agree, as the superintendent said, in collaboration, in working together, and empowering our teachers to help come up with those instruments. But ultimately, we all got to be accountable. And we all got to recognize that the accountability is not just to ourselves. Real accountability and transparency is your accountability to the parents, to the students, and to the public. That's the real accountability. So, as I've said time and again, I have no formal authority over LA schools, but I do have a bully pulpit, and I will continue to use it. I don't have a vote in Sacramento any longer, and with term limits, most of them don't remember that I once did. And I've heard a lot of people tell me I shouldn't take on this fight. Been told the bureaucracy is too entrenched and the problems are too big to solve. But when I think about my grandson and the school system he will soon enter, I know that something has to change. It's easy for politicians and policymakers to make decisions about other people's kids. It's only as parents and grandparents that we truly understand just how vital these decisions are. So as we move forward and continue this conversation, I think we ought to put aside our differences, recognize that, yes, we must adequately fund our schools, but we cannot allow a single penny to fund failure. We need to make the critical changes that will allow taxpayers to see a return on their investment. We've got to put teachers front and center so that we can be certain our students are given the education that they deserve. And once and for all, let's stop clinging to outdated loyalties that are roadblocks to real reform efforts. No one thing will fix our schools. I'm not a demagogue. It's going to take a lot to solve the dropout crisis and the achievement gap. Right now, it's almost unfathomable to think that young families used to move to California because of our great public education system. But restoring them to their celebrated greatness, bringing our students into the 21st century global economy is a challenge that we must meet. There isn't doubt in my mind that California, the state that fostered the innovation of Silicon Valley and the creativity of Hollywood, can once again deliver on its promise to all its students. Remember this, California educates 1 out of 8 American school children. That's a huge responsibility, one that we cannot afford to shirk. So I hope to work with you and the many other stakeholders to protect the future of the state, to stand up for all of the kids in our schools, to restore the greatness to our public education system. Thank you very much.